Hey guys, this is Shane. I'm back with another video to share my full review of the Galaxy Tab A9. This is a new budget-oriented tablet from Samsung. It's their smallest and most affordable tablet in their lineup. I'll have some links in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. I got it myself about a month and a half ago for $130. I'll be sure to have the latest pricing in the description for whenever you're watching this video. There are 3 different colors to choose from. We have this navy, which is what I've been personally using. We also have a silver and gray color, which I have here for your reference on the Tab A9 Plus, the larger version of this one. A couple different options of this tablet. So we have the standard 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage, which is what I have here and I'm going to be basing this review off of. However, there is also an 8 gigabyte RAM and 128 gigabyte storage model, but I personally had a hard time finding this one when I was shopping for this, so you might have to look a little harder for that one. And there's also a cellular LTE version of this tablet with the 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage, which I did also purchase, and I'm personally on that device full time now compared to the Wi-Fi model. There are a couple differences between the two despite just the cellular connectivity. I'll get to that later in the video. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and check out the Galaxy Tab A9. So inside the box, we have the device on top. Let's see what else we get inside. Also have a little bit of paperwork. And we have a USB Type-C to Type-C charging cable and a SIM ejection tool, but that is everything in the box. There's no charger included with this, so just keep this in mind. But let's go ahead and check out the star of the show here, the Galaxy Tab A9. Now, I have been using this for about a month and a half. Just put it back in the box for show. Obviously, you'll notice this is Samsung's smallest tablet currently available. It is one-handable, so you can use this as a large phone, essentially. We have some plastic on the top and the bottom, but aside from that, we have a sturdy aluminum finish on here, which is something you don't want to take for granted because I've used this Amazon tablet for many years now. It has a plastic backing and it has all these scratches all over it, so you're not going to be experiencing that at all with this tablet. Taking a physical tour, we have the single lens camera on the back. We also have a portrait-oriented front-facing camera here. We'll check out some footage later. On the right side, we have our power button and volume rockers. We have one of our mics. On the right or the bottom, depending on your orientation, we have a headphone jack. We have a Type-C port capable of 15-watt fast charging. We have another mic, and it's worth noting we have a dual speaker setup on this tablet. On the left side, we have our SIM tray, which if you get the cellular version, you'll have a spot for your SIM card like I have here, and then you have a micro SD card slot capable of storing an extra 1 terabyte of additional storage in here. If you have the Wi-Fi model, you won't have that SIM slot, but you will still have that micro SD card slot. And one other unique difference between these two versions, if you get the cellular version, you do have an earpiece at the top. So again, you can use this as a large phone and you have a normal earpiece like you would on any other smartphone. The tablet is 8 millimeters thick, so thicker than your conventional smartphone, but still has a great feel in the hand. It's a little bit of a boxier design compared to the previous Galaxy Tab A7 Lite. This one was a little bit more rounded on the edges. This one still does feel pretty comfortable. The edges aren't sharp or anything. More importantly, the weight has been reduced on this Tab A9. So if we throw this on the scale, it's coming in at 330 grams. If I throw that Tab A7 Lite here on the scale, this is coming in at 365 grams. So might not sound like a lot of a difference on paper, but that 35 grams reduced weight is definitely noticeable here, especially since I'm using this a lot in one hand to either scroll through web pages like this, like a big phone, or holding it in landscape orientation to watch YouTube videos. But now getting into actually reviewing this tablet, since like I said, I've been using this exclusively for the past month and a half every single day. I definitely have a good feel for this tablet, definitely ready to share my full thoughts on it. Starting with the biometrics, getting into this tablet, we have face recognition here, no fingerprint sensor or anything, but for whatever it's worth, the face recognition works pretty good. It's not as good as on my Galaxy Tab A9 Plus that I reviewed before this. There are times where I can't get it to read and I do have to just go ahead and put my pattern in to get into the tablet, but it does work at a lot of different angles. So if I have it really far away, it can still unlock like on that Tab A9 Plus. And if it's really close, it can unlock too. So it does have a good amount of range. And once you're in, you'll be greeted by the 8.7 inch display. This has a 1340 by 800 resolution, so slightly higher than 720p, has a 60 hertz refresh rate, and it is a TFT display. Now, the 60 hertz refresh rate has been noticeable for me compared to the 90 hertz that I have on my Tab A9 Plus. When I'm quickly scrolling through feeds, such as YouTube, for example, I can notice a little bit of sluggishness with that refresh rate, but the performance itself has been pretty fine. It is worth mentioning that because of that 720p resolution, some of your text can look a little grainy and you can notice pixels if you're looking really close at this, but if you're just using this in an average general use case, you're not really worrying about the specs or anything, it's really not that bad. And I would say that watching YouTube on this is still very enjoyable because there's not much of black bars going on here. You can see that this fills up pretty much the entire screen when watching YouTube videos. I can really comfortably watch YouTube on this. And again, in that kind of big phone use case, I also found myself watching YouTube a lot in the portrait orientation because this is large enough. This is almost the same as if you were having a phone and turned it sideways to landscape. It's pretty much that same size. And then I can just go ahead and read comments while I'm watching videos, or I can go ahead and bring out something else if I want to be doing some sort of multitasking. I can go ahead and do that as well. You can see here performance is fine, even though this is more of a budget processor on here. The screen does get plenty bright. This is at 50% brightness right now. I usually don't have it lower than 50% because the viewing angles aren't the greatest on this, so it does kind of get in the way of the viewing experience. But if you have this maxed out at the maximum brightness, you can see it very easily in any setting. Even if you're outside in direct sunlight, you still can see this tablet, which is really helpful if you have that cellular model. The screen size is unchanged from the Tab A7 Lite, the previous generation. This also had an 8.7-inch display. But one of the major changes coming to this Tab A9 compared to that A7 Lite is the performance. So this comes packed with the MediaTek Helio G99 processor. Now, as far as I know, this is still a lower end chipset. This is a $130 tablet. But in my average general use, the performance has been very good. You can see that navigating through the tablet's pretty smooth. We don't have much stuttering or anything. Go ahead and open up the weather here. Just get an idea of the general performance. You can see this opened up right away, perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and do a web browser test. Let's go to Samsung.com. You can see Samsung opened up really quickly. This is a resource-intensive website. This opened up no problem at all. Switch over to landscape. See, this switches over pretty quickly. Great web browsing device because of this larger size of the 8.7-inch screen. Let's go ahead and jump over to Amazon. See, this loads perfectly fine. Open up the Bible app. Do have to wait a split second compared to some of my higher end Samsung devices, but overall this is perfectly fine for your average everyday use. Taking a look at the 4 gigabytes of RAM on this, see here if I go back to a game that I've been playing recently, you can see that it does take a little bit of time to open back up, but it does open back up into the game. It doesn't completely restart it, so I don't lose my progress or anything, which has been really nice. But overall, there still is a little bit of a RAM limitation here. So if I go ahead and jump into YouTube, let's say I had a video open before, yeah, you can see it is going to reload the app here, which it still does have my video saved here. That is just YouTube itself. As far as the RAM, it does take me back to the original page. I have not been doing nearly as much multitasking as I did on that larger Tab A9 Plus. So I'm not opening as many applications. So personally, I'm not running into as many RAM issues with this smaller Tab A9. But most importantly, every single time I've picked up this tablet and I want to quickly jump into something, it's done it perfectly fine. Taking a quick look at a YouTube video here and getting an idea for the audio of that lower spec version, so might be worth considering that. And there's also a cellular 5G version of this tablet, and that comes with the 4 gigabytes of RAM and 60. So plenty loud speakers here. It's also worth mentioning that in YouTube, you can upscale the resolution to as high as 1440p. Now, this is, again, that 1340 by 800 display, so I'm not sure what benefit there is at 1440p, but I do often put this at the 1080p 60 to get the highest resolution that I can get on this. This has been a great little device for just watching media and catching up on your content. Where the performance really shines on this tablet, for me personally, this is what I've been doing the most on this tablet, is actually gaming, to my surprise. So if you need to be tapping things a lot in the middle of the screen, you don't have a massive tablet that it's hard to reach things with your thumbs. You can see here that I could do everything with my thumbs in the middle of the screen if I wanted to have both of my hands on it at all times. It is nice to just hold it in one hand too. Go ahead and tap things with your index finger if you want to. It's really easy to navigate this tablet and play a lot of different games on it. I didn't find the 800p resolution to really be that much of a nuisance either at all when I'm playing games. I don't even really notice that lower resolution. If I zoom all the way out here, do a lot of scrolling and navigating, you can see it's not choppy at all. There isn't any sort of lag. So been really enjoying the performance on this Tab A9, but where the performance really ramps up for me is when I plug this into a controller and I put on Dolphin Emulator and play some of my GameCube games like Super Mario Strikers. This game literally could not play on my previous Tab A7 Lite. It runs at maybe 1 to 10 frames per second, but on this Tab A9, I can run this at a perfectly smooth 60 frames per second, and this has been such a game-changing experience for me that I'm going to be making a dedicated video on this gaming setup here with this mobile controller alongside the Tab A9. Of all the gaming setups that I've tried and used over the years of running this channel and testing tons of different Samsung devices, this has been the best gaming experience I've had to date, which is very surprising to say since I've used $1,800 foldable phones to do gaming setups like this. It is a perfect balance of a lightweight device with a very large screen, and I'll mention it now, there are actually haptics on the LTE version of this tablet compared to the Wi-Fi version. It does not have a vibration motor, and that does make a big difference for me personally when playing games like Mario Strikers, because every time I'm doing an action in this game, I do get a little bit of vibration and haptic feedback, which is greatly appreciated for me personally on a lower end tablet like this, because sometimes you don't know if an action went through or not, but you do get that haptic feedback every time you want to do a navigation gesture. You can feel some haptic feedback when you are typing, so this is why I have now stuck with the LTE version. I don't use the Wi-Fi anymore. With the LTE version, you can send and receive text messages and you can make and receive phone calls. So I've done both on this tablet perfectly fine. You can use this as a large phone if you wanted to. It does suit that use case. But for whatever it's worth, I probably wouldn't outright recommend this as your only device or smartphone of use. I personally still use a phone alongside this tablet. The bigger screen does eat up a lot more of the battery. So now taking a closer look at the battery life performance in a lighter use case, so just watching YouTube, checking out some deals online, browsing the web, playing around with this tablet and just checking out some of your comments. In an hour and a half of screen on time, it used 24% of the battery. So that equates to about 6 hours of total screen on time in a lighter use case. Looking at more of a mixed use case, so an hour and a half of playing that more battery intensive Dolphin Emulator, an hour of watching YouTube and a little bit of browsing the web, 2 hours and 52 minutes of screen on time, used 55%. So I think in a lot of more real life use cases, you're probably going to be getting less than 6 hours of screen on time. The idle drainage, it's going to use 6% per 24-hour period, so over a week's time, it could drain about half of the battery. In my most extreme battery test, I only played the Dolphin Emulator for the entire life of the battery, did this over the course of 3 days, so I got about an hour and a half of screen time over the course of those 3 days, and it was about 3 hours of gaming. So if you're doing really heavy gaming on this over a few days time in short bursts, you can expect around 3 hours to 3.5 hours. However, I was happy to see if you're playing lighter games like that old school RuneScape, I was able to get 3 hours of screen on time using up about half of the battery. So I could get 6 hours of screen on time. Looking at my most realistic use case, this is probably the best you can expect out of this tablet. In 2 days time, I got nearly 5.5 hours of screen on time. That seems to be falling in the middle of all my different tests. This is definitely lower than what I was getting on my larger Tab A9 Plus. I could get 7.5 to 10, 11 hours out of this bigger tablet. I am charging this one up a lot more than I'm usually accustomed to, but I've been really enjoying it, so it's an area that I've been putting up with, and I've also had to put up with slower charging speeds on this since it just charges at 15 watts. So in 36 minutes time, it gets up to 22%. After an hour, it gets only up to 36%. The most charging seems to happen in that second hour. After 2 hours, it gets to 85%. Then an hour later, it's stuck at 99%. I had this issue also on the Tab A9 Plus. It took about 18 additional minutes to get to that full 100% charge, but overall, it does take a little over 3 hours to fully charge this. Taking a look at the cameras, we have the single lens on the back. This is an 8 megapixel camera. Your average everyday photos look fine. It can sometimes have a little trouble focusing, and the pictures are just average in my testing, and it can zoom up to 10 times digitally if you would need that. It also films in 1080p 30. Video is a bit choppy for my personal liking. It does get average videos here and there, but I would much rather use a phone with more image stabilization, but it does get the job done in a pinch. Flipping around to the front, we have the 2 megapixel front-facing camera. This films in 720p 30 resolution. We have the camera off to the side, but the picture quality, I'd say, gets the job done in a pinch, and it sounds good enough as far as the mics are concerned. Definitely gets the job done. So with all that said, I've been really enjoying this Galaxy Tab A9 in my first month and a half of usage. If you're the type of person to use your phone for a lot of things throughout the day, getting a tablet like this is going to really enhance your average user experience of looking through your social media apps and especially playing games. You get so much more screen real estate, and you get a familiar form factor and feel of just having a large phone. But if you're looking to get some more serious work done, the Tab A9 Plus definitely can handle that with the larger screen, and we have a much more crisp image on this one with the 19 by 1200 resolution, again the 90 Hz refresh rate. I also noticed the colors to be quite good on this, even though it is a TFT display. But even though this isn't the greatest specs, I've enjoyed the experience more so with this device because of that compact nature. But I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on the Galaxy Tab A9 in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to the Shane Symonds YouTube channel today, since next up I'm going to be reviewing the Galaxy A35. I've been using this for about a month now. This is Samsung's official mid-range option here in the US for 2024. But until then, thanks so much for watching. Take care.